But the problem is that when we slide into decisions instead of making them explicitly and intentionally, we often make worse decisions that have worse outcomes for us. It's this idea of letting life happen to us rather than thoughtfully creating the life we want that seems to be the real key here. So you don't have to wait to start actively directing your life until 5, 10, 15 years from now. You can start today. Hey guys, welcome to the Get and Stay Hitched podcast. I'm Cameron Reckenmacher, a relationship therapist and the founder of HITCHED, the first ever marriage-focused, values-based dating app with relationship coaching. Okay, so I want to talk to you guys today about some of the worst dating advice that I hear really frequently these days, because I really think it's contributing to why it's so hard for a lot of us to get into long-term relationships. I first realized how bad this dating advice is through my own relationship with my husband before we actually got married. Our relationship totally blew up everything I thought I knew about dating, and it actually made me question a lot of the things that I thought were just common knowledge. I started to really think more about the advice I'd gotten about dating on things like how it's good to practice dating since you can improve it like any other skill, or that you should date multiple people before choosing someone to spend the rest of your life with so that you know what you do and don't like in a partner. Or that living together before marriage is the only way to really know if you're compatible with someone. And then the last one, you should date for at least a couple years before thinking about getting married. So it turned out that, at least for my husband and me, none of these assumptions actually came true. And then as I read more and more research on long-lasting marriages, I started to realize that these assumptions actually aren't supported by science either. So it turns out that many of the rules that today's society have about dating and relationships aren't just not helpful, they're actually probably pretty harmful for anyone who wants to get and stay married to the same person one day. So if you're ready to start dating to find your future spouse, then that means it's time to throw out this really crappy advice and replace it with some evidence-based ways to date in order to find your spouse faster. Before I continue, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel if you want to hear more about all things dating, relationships, and trends in American family life. And if you know anyone who you think could benefit from listening to this video, please do share it with them. It really helps us get the word out about the work we're doing here. Okay, so what crappy dating rules are we throwing out? Number 1, living together before marriage. So this is really interesting. We've been doing psychological research on the effects of what they call cohabitation in the psychological community. That just means living together before marriage, since about the 1970s. And the general consensus of this research is that if you move in with somebody that you're dating before you have an explicit intention and timeline for getting married, that's really not good for the long-term outcomes of that relationship. And so the real key here is the intentionality and the reason for your choice to move in together. So if you want to move in together because you need to save money on rent, or it's just kind of convenient because one of your leases are ending on your apartment and why not, or even you just want to spend more time together, or you want to test out the relationship, that tends to not be really great for the longevity of the relationship. Versus if you're already engaged, or if you have explicit plans about when you want to get engaged and when you want to get married, that seems to not have the same sort of negative effects on your chances of staying together for life. So really this comes down to the intentionality of our choices. And it turns out that intentionality in our decision making is actually a huge problem across all spans of life for a lot of people right now. So we have this tendency in today's society to fall into situations and commitments without enough thought behind them. For example, we often fall into college because that's the logical next step after high school. And then when we're in college, we fall into a major because our friends are doing it, or our parents want us to do it, or it seems like it's useful, or maybe it's just not that hard. Then we'll fall into a career based on a job we got by choice after graduating, and we often fall into our relationships as well. So maybe we've been dating the same person since college because it'd be painful and inconvenient to break up. And then because we've been together so long and it seems like we might not have that many other options, we kind of just slide into marriage with that person. But the problem is that when we slide into decisions instead of making them explicitly and intentionally, we often make worse decisions that have worse outcomes for us. It's this idea of letting life happen to us rather than thoughtfully creating the life we want that seems to be the real key here. So you don't have to wait to start actively directing your life until 5, 10, 15 years from now. You can start today. Okay, number 2. explore sexually before marriage. So the research findings here are super interesting as well. Basically, people who have more sexual partners before they end up getting married tend to divorce more frequently once they're married. And one of the really interesting takeaways from a lot of the research I'd read on this is that it doesn't seem to be the case that religion is the cause for this trend. It doesn't seem to matter how religious people are. If they're having a lot of sex before they get married, they're still more likely to get divorced, which, cards on the table here. I'm a religious person. I kind of wanted religion to be the reason that if you're not having sex before marriage, you're more likely to have a successful marriage, but that does not seem to be the case. In addition to that, another super interesting thing here is that this is true for both men and women. So I think a lot of the times in today's world, we think that it's okay for guys to sleep around and they can still have a successful marriage later, but maybe the consequences are bigger for women. But this also doesn't seem to be true, that sleeping around before we get married is bad for the longevity of the marriages for both men and women. And lastly, an important point that I want to add here is that some research suggests that the context in which we're sleeping with multiple partners before we get married also maybe doesn't matter that much, which means that if we've slept with a lot of people before we get married because we're doing a lot of casual dating, that seems to be not that much worse than if we've slept with a lot of people because we've been in a lot of committed relationships. So if you're getting pressure to sleep with someone you're dating or to explore your sexual preferences before you end up meeting and marrying the love of your life, please let this video be your permission to give that pressure the middle finger and do whatever it is that you truly believe is the right thing for you to set yourself up for a lifelong marriage in the future. Number 3, practice dating to get better at it. So dating different people to figure out what we like and don't like in a partner seems pretty logical on the surface. And some people might even believe that dating multiple people over time is going to make us better at relationships in general. But it turns out that this is actually not the case. And I think what's going on here is when people report that they have really high satisfaction in their relationships, it's often because the person that they're dating seems to be very committed to the relationship. And in addition to that, when we're more committed ourselves to a relationship, we tend to report greater overall well-being and happiness with the relationship. The problem with practice dating is that it's really hard to be truly committed to someone and to a relationship if you have this mindset that you're practicing dating as opposed to being really committed and very invested in making that relationship work. For example, think back to when you were in high school and you were taking a test. If your teacher said to you, this is just a practice test, how likely would you be to take that test as seriously as if the test were for real? I know that I would not take it as seriously. Not to mention, if we start dating before we're ready to find the person we want to settle down with, we're likely to end up settling for someone below our standards and end up experiencing a lot of pain and heartbreak when the relationship goes south. Or worse, we end up sliding into marriage with that person in the future because we weren't being intentional enough in our dating in the first place. Also, it's no secret that casual sex is linked with worse mental health in both women and men. We thrive on real love and connection as social creatures, and it's impossible to get that from casual dating and one-night stands. So if you want to protect your mental health and set yourself up for success in your future marriage, skip the practice dating phase altogether and wait to start dating until you really know who you are, who you want to become, and what you're looking for in a future spouse. Okay, so now that we've got the bad advice out of the way, how should we approach dating if we want to get married one day? Later this week, I'll post the second part of this video in which I share the 4 steps of what I call the Find Your Spouse formula. So you can start dating in a way that will help you get into a good relationship faster. So stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching this video. I really hope it was helpful. As a reminder, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel if you want to hear more about all things dating, relationships, and trends in American family life. And if you want to stay updated on the launch of Hitched, our dating app with relationship coaching, you can subscribe to our email list at www.hitcheddating.com. I'm Cameron, and this is the Get and Stay Hitched podcast.